1492, Christopher Columbus landed in the Americas. He claimed the land for Spain. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella had no idea what they had just won, not just new territory, not just trade routes. They had won the lottery, the biggest treasure in human history, enough gold and silver to buy the entire world. Within 50 years, Spain would become the richest empire on earth, the most powerful nation in Europe, an empire where the sun never set. And within 200 years, Spain would be bankrupt, destroyed, irrelevant, the weapon that killed them, not war, not plague, gold, the same gold that made them rich. This is the story of how Spain died of its own wealth. 1492. Hernán Cortés landed in Mexico. He had 600 soldiers, 16 horses, a few cannons. He faced the Aztec Empire, 5 million people, thousands of warriors, a civilization that had ruled Mexico for centuries. 2 years later, the Aztec Empire was destroyed. Cortés stood in the ruins of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, and what he found changed history. Gold everywhere, Aztec temples covered in gold, statues made of gold. Masks, jewelry, plates, cups, everything gold. The Aztecs valued gold for its beauty. The Spanish valued it for its power. Cortés melted it down, shipped it to Spain. The first shipment arrived in Seville in 1522, 1,800 pounds of gold. King Charles V couldn't believe it. This was more gold than the entire Spanish treasury, and this was just the first shipment. 1492. Francisco Pizarro conquered the Inca Empire in Peru. The Incas were even richer than the Aztecs. Their capital, Cusco, had a temple called Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun. The walls were covered in sheets of solid gold. The courtyard had a garden where every plant, every flower, every blade of grass was made of gold and silver. Life-size gold llamas, gold corn stalks, gold fountains. Pizarro captured the Inca Emperor Atahualpa. He demanded ransom. "Fill this room with gold," he said. The room was 22 feet long, 17 feet wide, and the gold had to reach 8 feet high. Atahualpa agreed. His people brought gold from across the empire. It took 2 months. When the room was full, Pizarro had it melted down, 13,000 pounds of gold, 26,000 pounds of silver. Pizarro killed Atahualpa anyway, and sent the treasure to Spain. By 1560, Spanish conquistadors had looted the Americas. Mexico, Peru, Colombia, every Aztec temple, every Inca palace, every native gold mine. But the looting was just the beginning. The Spanish discovered something even more valuable. 1545, Potosí. A mountain in Bolivia, a Spanish prospector found silver, not a vein, not a mine, an entire mountain of pure silver, Cerro Rico, the rich mountain. When the Spanish realized what they had found, they built a city at the base, Potosí. By 1600, this city in the middle of nowhere at 13,000 feet altitude had 200,000 people, larger than London, larger than Paris, one of the biggest cities in the world. Why? Silver, an endless mountain of silver. The Spanish forced the native people to work the mines. The Mita system, forced labor. Every native village had to send workers. Men descended into the mountain, into tunnels that went 1,000 feet deep. Dark, airless, temperatures over 100 degrees. They worked 16-hour shifts, carried silver ore on their backs, 100-pound loads, climbing rope ladders in the dark. Many fell, many suffocated, many were crushed when tunnels collapsed. The Spanish used mercury to extract silver from ore. Mercury is poison. It destroys your lungs, your brain, your nervous system. Workers inhaled mercury vapor every day. They died slowly, coughing blood, shaking, going insane. The average life expectancy for a Potosí miner was 30 years. If you were sent to Potosí, you knew you were going to die there. How many died? Conservative estimates say 1 million over 300 years. Others say 8 million. The native population of Bolivia before the Spanish was approximately 1.5 million. By 1650, it was 600,000. The rest, dead in the mines, from disease, from overwork, from mercury poisoning. And Potosí alone produced 45,000 tons of pure silver. Roughly 60% of all silver in the world during the 1600s came from that one mountain. Every silver coin that paid a Spanish soldier, every silver plate in a Spanish palace, every silver chandelier in a Spanish church, built with blood, with death, with suffering beyond measure. Between 1500 and 1800, Spain extracted from the Americas over 180 tons of gold and 16,000 tons of silver. That's approximately $200 billion in today's money, the largest transfer of wealth in human history. Spain became unimaginably rich. King Philip II built a palace called El Escorial. It had 2,673 windows, 1,200 doors, 16 courtyards, 86 staircases, 88 fountains, 300 rooms. The walls were marble, the ceilings were gold leaf. It cost 5.5 million ducats, roughly $2 billion today. And Philip built it with cash, no loans, no debt, just gold. The Spanish Navy became the most powerful in the world. The Spanish Armada, 130 ships, 30,000 men, cannons that could sink anything afloat. Spanish infantry, the Tercios, were unbeatable, disciplined, well-armed, well-paid. Every soldier received his salary in silver coins. Real de ocho, pieces of 8, the most trusted currency in the world. Spanish merchants controlled trade across Europe. Spanish bankers funded wars from London to Vienna. Spain was the superpower. The empire where the sun never set. From Mexico to the Philippines, from Peru to the Netherlands, one king, one empire, unlimited gold, and that's when everything started to go wrong. Prices began to rise. In 1500, a loaf of bread in Madrid cost 2 maravedis. By 1550, the same bread cost 6 maravedis. By 1600, it cost 15 maravedis. Wheat prices increased 400% in a century. Wool prices tripled, wine prices doubled, meat became a luxury. The common people couldn't understand it. We have more gold than ever. Why is everything more expensive? The answer is simple: too much money, not enough goods. When gold floods the market, the value of gold drops, and when gold is money, money becomes worthless. Economists call this inflation. The Spanish called it the price revolution, and it destroyed them. Here's what happened. Spanish gold flooded into Spain. The king was rich, the nobles were rich, the merchants were rich, everyone had money, so they spent it. They bought imported goods from across Europe. French wine, Flemish cloth, Italian glass, German steel, English wool. Spanish gold flowed out to buy foreign products, but Spain produced almost nothing itself. Why work when you have gold? Why build factories when you can buy everything? Spanish industry died. Workshops closed. Craftsmen became unemployed. Farmers abandoned their fields. Why grow wheat when you can buy it cheaper from France? Spanish agriculture collapsed. By 1600, Spain imported most of its food: bread from France, meat from Germany, fish from England, an empire sitting on a mountain of gold, starving. But the worst part, the gold didn't stay in Spain. It flowed through Spain like water through a sieve. First, it went to pay for imports. Spanish nobles wanted luxury. They bought everything foreign. The gold left Spain and never came back. Second, it went to pay soldiers. Spain was constantly at war, fighting the Dutch, fighting the French, fighting the English, fighting the Ottomans. The Tercios were stationed across Europe, in the Netherlands, in Italy, in Germany. Every month, their salaries were paid in Spanish silver. The silver left Spain and stayed in Europe. Third, it went to foreign bankers. The kings of Spain borrowed constantly. Philip II took loans from German bankers, Italian bankers, Flemish bankers. Why borrow when you have gold? Because the gold was already spent. The treasure ships arrived. The king spent the money immediately. Then he needed more, so he borrowed against next year's gold shipment, and the next, and the next. By 1550, Philip II was borrowing against gold that hadn't even been mined yet. The bankers charged high interest. 15%, 20%, sometimes 30% annual interest. Why so high? Because Spanish kings had a terrible habit. They defaulted. When the debt became too big, the king simply declared bankruptcy. Refused to pay, wrote off the debt, started fresh. Philip II defaulted 4 times. In 1557, 1560, 1575, and 1596. His son Philip III defaulted 3 times. Philip IV defaulted 6 times. Spain defaulted on its debt 14 times between 1500 and 1900. A record. Every time they defaulted, the bankers demanded higher interest rates next time. The risk was enormous, and Spain kept borrowing because they had no choice. The empire was addicted to spending, addicted to war, addicted to gold. And what did Spain spend all this gold on? War. Endless, pointless, ruinously expensive war. 1588, Philip II launched the Spanish Armada against England. 130 ships, 30,000 men, the largest naval invasion in history. Goal: conquer England, restore Catholic rule, destroy Protestant heresy. Cost: 10 million ducats, that's $4 billion today. The Armada sailed. English ships harassed them. Storms destroyed them. Only 67 ships returned to Spain. Half the men died. The invasion failed completely. 10 million ducats. Gone, wasted. Philip borrowed more to rebuild the fleet, and the debt grew larger. 1568. The Netherlands revolted against Spanish rule. The Dutch wanted independence, freedom from Spanish taxes, freedom from Catholic persecution. Philip sent the Tercios to crush them. The war lasted 80 years. 80 years, the longest war in European history, cost to Spain incalculable, hundreds of millions of ducats, thousands of soldiers dead, and in the end the Dutch won. They became independent in 1648. Spain lost its richest province. The cost of this one war was more than all the gold extracted from the Americas. Think about that. All that Aztec gold, all that Inca silver, all those deaths at Potosí, wasted on a war they lost. But Spain kept fighting. Why? Pride, prestige, religious duty. The Spanish kings believed God wanted Spain to rule, to spread Catholicism, to crush heresy. Money was irrelevant, God would provide, and the gold kept coming. Every year the treasure fleet arrived from the Americas. Every year the king spent it, and borrowed more. Spanish scholars warned the kings. In 1556, Martin de Azpilicueta, a Spanish economist, wrote a treatise explaining inflation. He said, stop flooding Spain with gold and silver. Invest in agriculture, build industries, produce goods. The king ignored him. In 1600, González de Celerigo wrote that Spain was dying from its wealth. He said, "We import everything, we produce nothing. The gold makes us lazy, we need to work, build, create." The king ignored him too. Why listen to scholars when you have treasure ships arriving every year? There's a famous story about Philip II that captures the Spanish attitude perfectly. One day his advisors told him the treasury was empty. Philip asked, "When is the next treasure fleet arriving?" They said, "In 3 months." Philip replied, "Then we borrow for 3 months." The advisors protested, "Your Majesty, we already owe too much." Philip said, "God will provide, the treasure fleet will arrive. God always provides." That was the Spanish mentality: faith in gold, faith in God, no planning, no strategy. Just spend and pray. The decline accelerated through the 1600s. 1640, Catalonia revolted against Spanish rule. 1640, Portugal declared independence after 60 years of Spanish control. Spain tried to stop them, failed, lost Portugal forever. 1643, the French defeated the Spanish at the Battle of Rocroi. The Tercios, unbeaten for a century, were destroyed. The myth of Spanish invincibility died on that battlefield. 1648. The Treaty of Westphalia ended the 30 Years' War. Spain lost influence in Germany, lost prestige across Europe. 1659, the Treaty of the Pyrenees. Spain ceded territory to France, accepted defeat. The empire was shrinking, weakening, dying. And the economy, collapsing. By 1650, Spanish industry was dead, agriculture was ruined, the population was declining, plague and war had killed millions. Villages were abandoned, fields lay empty. The treasure ships still arrived every year from the Americas, but the gold went straight through Spain to foreign bankers, to pay old debts. Spain saw none of it. The empire had become a pipeline. Gold flowed in from the west, gold flowed out to the east. Spain was just the hollow middle, empty. Bankrupt, broken. But even as Spain collapsed at home, the silver kept flowing from Potosí. And here's where the story gets truly global. Most of that silver didn't even stay in Europe, it went to China. The Spanish were obsessed with Chinese goods: silk, porcelain, tea, spices. They bought massive quantities. The only thing the Chinese wanted in payment: silver. China had little silver of its own. Spanish silver became Chinese currency. The Spanish established a direct trade route: the Manila galleons. Every year, ships sailed from Acapulco in Mexico to Manila in the Philippines, loaded with American silver. In Manila, they traded the silver for Chinese goods, then sailed back. This route operated for 250 years. Historians estimate that 1/3 of all American silver ended up in China. The natives of Bolivia died mining it, the Spanish extracted it, and the Chinese got it. Spain was just the middleman, getting rich, then going bankrupt. 1700, King Charles II died. He had no children, no heir. The Spanish Habsburg dynasty ended. Europe fought over who would control Spain. The War of Spanish Succession lasted 13 years. Spain was the prize everyone wanted, but Spain itself was bankrupt, powerless, a shadow. The new king, Philip V of the Bourbon dynasty, inherited an empire in ruins. The treasury was empty, the army was weak, the navy was rotting, the people were poor, and the gold still flowing from the Americas, but it meant nothing. Because Spain produced nothing, sold nothing, built nothing, the gold just passed through on its way to creditors. 1700. King Charles III ordered a full accounting of Spanish finances. The report was devastating. Spain owed 700 million reals. Annual revenue was 400 million reals. Even with the American silver, they couldn't pay their debts. The empire was technically insolvent, bankrupt. Again, Charles tried reforms, modernizing the economy, encouraging industry, building factories, but it was too late. 300 years of easy money had destroyed the Spanish work ethic. Nobody wanted to work in factories when their grandfathers had lived off gold. The culture had changed. Spain had become a nation of consumers, not producers, and consumers without production always end up poor. Then came the final blow. 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain. The Spanish military, once the most feared in Europe, collapsed in weeks. The great Tercios were long gone. The soldiers were unpaid, untrained, poorly equipped. The treasury was empty. Spain couldn't defend itself. Napoleon installed his brother Joseph as king of Spain. The Spanish people revolted, guerrilla warfare, brutal, savage. For 6 years Spain bled. The economy was destroyed, the cities were burned, the people starved. And across the ocean the American colonies watched. They saw Spain was weak, vulnerable, and they saw opportunity. 1810, Mexico revolted against Spanish rule. 1816, Argentina declared independence. 1818, Chile broke free. 1819, Colombia. 1821, Peru. One by one the colonies that had fed Spain with gold and silver for 300 years rebelled. And one by one they won their independence. Spain tried to reconquer them, sent expeditions, fought battles, lost. By 1825 Spain had lost almost everything. The gold mines of Mexico, the silver mountains of Potosí, the vast territories that had made Spain a superpower, all gone. The empire was reduced to Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, scraps, remnants, shadows of former glory. The final humiliation came in 1898, the Spanish-American War. Spain fought the United States over Cuba and the Philippines, the last remnants of the empire. The war lasted 4 months. Spain lost every battle. The Spanish fleet was destroyed at Manila Bay and Santiago de Cuba. Modern American warships obliterated the old Spanish vessels. It wasn't even close. The treaty was signed in Paris. Spain lost Cuba, lost Puerto Rico, lost the Philippines, lost Guam. The Spanish Empire, which once ruled half the world, was finished. A Spanish delegate at the treaty signing reportedly said, "We lost everything that remained, and we deserved to lose it. We wasted 400 years, we had the world, and we squandered it on pride, on war, on gold." Here's the ultimate irony. Compare Spain to England. England had no gold mines, no silver mines, no treasure fleets. When the Spanish were extracting billions from the Americas, the English had nothing. But England built factories, textile mills, shipyards. England produced goods, sold them worldwide, built an empire on trade and industry, not treasure, work. By 1800, England was the richest country in the world, controlled a quarter of the globe. The Industrial Revolution started in England, not Spain. Why? Because England had to work, had to innovate, had to produce. They had no gold to fall back on, and that forced them to build real wealth. Spain had gold, England had industries, and in the long run, industries beat gold every single time. The economic term for what happened to Spain is called Dutch disease. When a country discovers vast natural resources like gold or oil, it stops developing other industries. Why work hard when you have easy money? The resource makes you rich in the short term, but long term it destroys your economy. The Netherlands experienced this with natural gas in the 1960s. Manufacturing collapsed. They called it Dutch disease, but Spain had it 400 years earlier, gold disease. And it killed them. The lessons are brutal. First, money is not wealth. Wealth is the ability to produce value. Gold is just metal. It has no value unless you can trade it for goods. And if you produce no goods, the gold flows away. Second, easy money destroys work ethic. Why build when you can buy? Why innovate when you have treasure? Spain stopped working, stopped creating, and died. Third, inflation destroys empire. Too much money chasing too few goods. Prices explode. The poor starve. The economy collapses. Spain experienced the first major inflation crisis in European history and learned nothing from it. Fourth, war is expensive. Spain fought for 300 years. Every war cost more than the last, and they lost most of them. The treasure bought temporary power, but power bought with gold disappears the moment the gold runs out. You might think this is ancient history, irrelevant to today. You're wrong. Venezuela, the richest country in South America in the 1970s, had the largest oil reserves in the world, sold oil, made billions, stopped developing other industries. Why work when you have oil money? Built nothing, produced nothing, just sold oil and imported everything else. 2010s, oil prices collapsed. Venezuela had no other economy, no factories, no agriculture, no services, nothing. The country imploded. Hyperinflation, starvation, millions fled, complete collapse. It's the Spanish curse. 400 years later, same disease, different resource. Saudi Arabia, sitting on the richest oil reserves on earth, for 50 years lived entirely on oil money. Built palaces, funded wars, bought everything foreign, produced almost nothing. Now oil is declining. The future is electric cars, renewable energy. Saudi Arabia knows what's coming. They're desperately trying to diversify, building industries, developing tourism, investing in technology. Vision 2030. Why? Because they studied history, they know. If oil ends and they produce nothing else, they become Spain. Rich today, bankrupt tomorrow. Norway shows the alternative. Norway discovered massive oil reserves in the North Sea in the 1960s. They could have spent it all, lived like kings. Instead, they saved it, created the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, invested the oil money in global stocks, bonds, real estate. Today, that fund is worth over $1.5 trillion, the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. Norway didn't just sell oil, they built industries, invested in education, developed technology. They produce goods, export services. If oil disappeared tomorrow, Norway would survive. Why? Because they remembered Spain. They learned from history. Easy money is poison. Real wealth comes from work. Spain conquered the world, extracted $200 billion in treasure, built the largest empire since Rome, ruled half the globe, and went bankrupt, destroyed not by enemies, not by war, not by plague, destroyed by gold. The gold made them rich, the gold made them lazy, the gold made them arrogant, the gold caused inflation. The gold flowed away, and Spain was left with nothing. An empire built on treasure collapsed into dust. This is cinematic history tales, where empires fall, where economics kills, where history becomes cinema. If you want more stories like this, epic collapses, economic disasters, empires that destroyed themselves from within, hit subscribe. Because the lesson of Spain is simple but brutal. Easy money is poison, treasure without production is worthless, and empires that forget to work die. No matter how much gold they have, Spain had everything and lost everything. Because they died of their own gold. Next time, the coin that killed Rome. How the Roman Empire debased its currency and triggered the first hyperinflation in recorded history. See you then.